When we think of child abductions, we often picture helpless victims paralyzed by fear. However, the extraordinary survival stories of Katie Beers, Jeanette Tamayo, and Jennifer Schuett completely shatter this narrative. All three girls, none older than 10, were suddenly thrust into terrifying captivity. Yet instead of surrendering, they awakened their sharpest instincts through brilliant psychological manipulation, detective-like evidence gathering, and an unbreakable will to live. They actively outsmarted their captors. These young heroes forged their own paths to rescue, transforming their nightmares into undeniable testaments of resilience and ultimate victory. When discussing child abductions, society often heartbreakingly envisions small, vulnerable victims, paralyzed by fear in the face of profound darkness. However, the case files of 9-year-old Katie Beers, 9-year-old Jeanette Tamayo, and 8-year-old Jennifer Schuett open up a completely different and astounding perspective. Their stories reveal the sheer survival power and extraordinary intellect of children thrust into the most harrowing of circumstances. All three girls, none older than 10, were suddenly forced into terrifying captivity, yet they completely refused to let the adversity consume them. The initial circumstances they faced were unimaginably grim. Katie was deceived by a trusted family friend and locked inside a custom-built, soundproof underground bunker. Jeanette's peaceful suburban life was shattered when an intruder breached her home, and she witnessed a terrifying confrontation involving her family before being taken away into isolation. Meanwhile, Jennifer was taken directly from her bedroom by an individual posing as an undercover police officer, driven to a desolate field, and left in a highly critical condition, completely stripped of her ability to speak. Yet, instead of breaking down, the isolation became the exact catalyst that awakened their sharpest survival instincts. These young girls transformed from targets into brilliant tactical thinkers. Katie, drawing on her profound inner strength, began to psychologically manipulate her captor. She cleverly acted as his confidant, keeping him calm and convincing him not to take his own life so that she would not be left trapped underground forever. Jeanette, inspired by investigative television shows, shifted her mindset into that of an undercover detective. She feigned compliance to lower her captor's guard, secretly securing crucial forensic evidence, like his watch and a clay toy bearing his fingerprints, and meticulously memorized the complex details of a pizza delivery address. Jennifer, despite being unable to utter a single sound, utilized her razor-sharp memory. Through handwritten notes, she recalled microscopic details about her attacker's vehicle, his appearance, and the specific name he gave her, eventually helping law enforcement create a precise composite sketch that would ultimately solve the case. Through psychological resilience, detective-like evidence gathering, and a fierce will to live, these three girls forged their own paths to rescue. Importantly, their journeys did not end with their physical survival. They grew into unstoppable women who reclaimed their own narratives. Katie authored a best-selling memoir and became a successful accountant and mother. Jeanette graduated college, completed an FBI Citizens Academy program, and dedicated her life to protecting vulnerable communities. Jennifer defied medical odds to start a family of her own, and now travels the country as a fierce advocate, proudly declaring herself a victor rather than a victim. They transformed their deepest nightmares into undeniable testaments of unbreakable human resilience. The phase of emotional shock and immersion into harsh environments represents a chilling turning point, where the perpetrator sought to completely dismantle the victim's sense of self and autonomy. This stage was defined by a transition from perceived safety into meticulously engineered nightmares, where the surroundings were as much a weapon as the captors themselves. Katie Beers' ordeal began with a jarring shift from a day meant for celebration to a mechanical horror. After being lured into a contractor's office, the facade of a friendly uncle instantly vanished. Underneath the floorboards, a hidden trapdoor revealed a void dropping straight into the earth. Using a heavy-duty pulley, her captor lowered her into a custom-built, soundproof vault that cost over $5,000 to construct. This was a high-tech psychological prison buried beneath a 200-pound solid concrete slab. Katie found herself in pitch-black silence, chained by the neck like a dog. The predator had even laid out 101 Dalmatians pajamas on a filthy mattress, a haunting detail of his calculated planning to monitor her every breath through a closed-circuit television (CCTV) system. For 17 days, this 6-by-7-foot box was designed to erase her existence from the world. Similarly, Jeanette Tamayo was thrust into an environment of extreme isolation and freezing terror. Following the violent intrusion into her home, she was driven to a dilapidated house where sheets covered the windows to hide the horrors within. She was confined to a cramped, locked room on the second floor. In a display of calculated cruelty, The captor would handcuff her tiny wrists to the metal plumbing of a showerhead, turn on the freezing water, and abandon her in the dark. Shivering and in deep physical pain, she was left alone to process the trauma of the attack on her family, convinced she was entirely isolated and that her loved ones had been lost. This environment was specifically intended to maximize her sense of helplessness and ensure her total submission. Jennifer Schuett's experience was characterized by utter physical desolation in the natural world. Snatched from her bed under the roof of an undercover police officer, she was taken to a desolate gravel dead-end road on the outskirts of town. In a massive field of overgrown weeds, she was subjected to a brutal attack that left her with life-threatening physical trauma. Her captor, believing he had successfully ended her life, dragged her by her ankles through the pitch-black field. He then dumped her onto a massive, swarming fire ant hill and left her to bleed out in the dirt. The environment here, the jagged rocks, rough dirt, and thousands of aggressive ants, was intended to be her final silent resting place. The severing of her vocal cords ensured that even if she found the strength to scream, no sound could escape into the vast empty field. These three environments, the high-tech bunker, the dilapidated house, and the desolate field, all served a singular, dark purpose: to isolate the victims and strip them of their voices. The sudden transition from safety to such extreme peril was designed to crush the titanium will of these children, yet it was precisely in these shadows that their extraordinary survival instincts began to stir. When plunged into the most harrowing circumstances imaginable, the most remarkable turning point for Katie Beers, Jeanette Tamayo, and Jennifer Schuett was the profound cognitive shift they each experienced. At a stage where most would succumb entirely to panic, the defining trait of all three girls was their extraordinary ability to activate deep survival defense mechanisms, keeping their minds razor-sharp and focused. They transformed their profound fear into calculated resilience. For 9-year-old Katie, a deeply difficult and highly toxic childhood had inadvertently equipped her with a terrifyingly efficient psychological shield. Locked away in the dark, she did not shed a tear, nor did she cry out or beg. She knew exactly how to detach herself from the immediate terror. Her survival instinct kicked into overdrive. While her captor confidently went about his day, Katie went to work in the shadows. She became highly observant, meticulously calculating his daily schedule and memorizing the exact number of steps he took down the ladder. She was silently gathering intelligence to use at the perfect moment. Jeanette Tamayo, also 9 years old, tapped into a different kind of brilliant inner strength. While the entire state of California was frantically searching for her, she made a chillingly calm and rational realization. She could not physically overpower the grown man holding her captive, so she had to completely outsmart him. Drawing upon her unusual childhood fascination with police procedurals and forensic television shows like CSI and Law & Order, Jeanette mentally switched her role from a captive to an undercover detective. She remembered the investigative protocols she had watched so intently and shifted her focus entirely towards strategy, psychological deception, and outmaneuvering her captor's defenses. 8-year-old Jennifer Schuett's survival instinct materialized during a moment of extreme, life-threatening peril in a desolate field. Realizing that moving or making noise would alert the dangerous man to her presence, she made a split-second, brilliant decision that is hard for even adults to fathom. She played dead. She went completely limp, turning her small body into dead weight, and refused to make a single sound until he finally walked away. Left in critical condition on top of a swarming fire ant hill, her situation was dire, yet the painful bites from the thousands of fire ants miraculously became her lifeline. Every time her traumatized body tried to shut down and slip away, the sharp stings shocked her system, jolting her awake and keeping her conscious enough to survive until she was finally found. These incredible cognitive turning points stand as a monumental testament to the unbreakable power of human resilience and the brilliance of the human mind. If you are inspired by the unyielding spirit of these young survivors and want to explore more stories that uncover incredible human fortitude, please subscribe to the channel and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. In the darkest moments of their captivity, these young girls executed a brilliant reversal of power. Instead of remaining passive targets, they actively wielded their intellect as a weapon against their captors, turning the tables through astonishing feats of memory, forensic gathering, and psychological manipulation. We begin with 8-year-old Jennifer Schuett, whose physical condition was the most perilous. Despite suffering from severe wounds and being incredibly weak, she weaponized her mind to secure justice. While fighting to stay conscious, she etched microscopic details of her attacker and his environment deep into her memory. She mentally cataloged a distinct dent on the side of his car. She noted the empty Bud Light cans littering the floorboard, and memorized the exact brand of Marlboro cigarettes he chain-smoked. Furthermore, She locked onto his specific physical traits, remembering his greasy hair, glasses, a distinct facial scar, and a black mustache. Most crucially, she remembered the specific name he had given her during the abduction: Dennis. This razor-sharp mental record, captured by a traumatized child on the brink of death, would eventually become the definitive key to identifying him. 9-year-old Jeanette Tamayo took an incredibly proactive approach to securing evidence, operating with the precision of a seasoned investigator. Recognizing she needed to disarm her captor's defenses, she feigned a friendly demeanor, pushing down her intense fear to ask him simple, conversational questions. This psychological deception worked perfectly. The captor relaxed his guard and unhooked her handcuffs before temporarily leaving the room. The moment the door shut, Jeanette sprang into action. She secretly hid a watch he had carelessly left behind and scooped up a small clay turtle toy, knowing his exact fingerprints were all over it. She also secured her own personal clothing to ensure crucial DNA evidence was preserved. By the time he returned, she had covertly gathered a forensic treasure trove that would guarantee he could never deny his actions. For 9-year-old Katie Beers, the ultimate weapon was masterful psychological warfare. Confined in an underground bunker, she essentially became her captor's confidant and therapist. She turned the tables by engaging him in conversation, playing into his twisted fantasies, by making promises about a future together to ensure he remained calm and invested in keeping her alive. Her manipulation reached an astonishing peak when the heavy police presence outside caused the captor to panic and state that he was going to take his own life. Katie quickly realized that if he died, she would be buried alive forever with no one to unseal the vault. In an incredible display of strategic composure, this little girl literally talked the predator out of suicide, convincing him to stay alive just long enough so that she could survive as well. The decisive blow in these harrowing cases was not delivered by a sudden stroke of luck, but through the brilliant, calculated strategies of the young survivors. Their continuous strategic actions served as the ultimate key that backed their captors into a corner, completely dismantling the illusions of control these perpetrators thought they held. For 9-year-old Katie Beers, the moment of rescue was the direct result of a spectacular psychological siege. While law enforcement and media vans relentlessly surrounded the property outside, Katie maintained a terrifyingly calm and calculated psychological front down in the bunker. This dual pressure proved insurmountable for her captor. The man who had spent a significant amount of money engineering a high-tech underground trap found himself utterly suffocated by his own creation. After 17 days of Katie's unyielding composure and the mounting police presence, the perpetrator completely lost his nerve. He gathered his legal counsel and finally confessed the 5 words that ended the manhunt: "She is behind the wall." Katie's extraordinary emotional regulation had effectively forced him to orchestrate her release. Jeanette Tamayo executed her decisive move with breathtaking theatricality and precision. Realizing that the intense media coverage was making her captor increasingly paranoid, the 9-year-old played her final, most desperate card. She feigned a severe, life-threatening asthma illness, skillfully manipulating the captor into believing she would perish in his custody. This flawless psychological deception broke his resolve, prompting him to drive her to a quiet convenience store and release her. The moment she was safe in the back of a police cruiser, she instantly transformed from a captive into the investigation's star witness. She effortlessly recited the exact street name and house number of her captivity. She provided the specific digits of his cell phone and the exact name of the pizza restaurant that had delivered their food. This unbelievable wealth of intelligence led SWAT teams directly to the dilapidated house, resulting in his capture in the pre-dawn hours. Jennifer Schuett's decisive strike was a masterclass in resilience that spanned nearly 2 decades. Following her rescue, she woke up in the pediatric intensive care unit, completely unable to utter a single syllable. However, she absolutely refused to let the loss of her voice silence her pursuit of justice. Through messy handwritten notes passed back and forth in a notebook, the 8-year-old provided detectives with actionable evidence. Communicating through simple nods and written details, she worked meticulously with a forensic sketch artist to produce an incredibly detailed composite drawing of the suspect. She even provided the specific name he had used: Dennis. Although forensic science was in its infancy at the time, her razor-sharp memory laid an unshakable foundation. 18 years later, when advanced DNA profiling technology caught up, the investigators matched the evidence directly to the name and the remarkably accurate face she had provided as a child, finally closing the cold case and bringing the perpetrator to light. The tragedy of an abduction does not magically evaporate the moment a victim is pulled from the darkness. For Katie Beers, Jeanette Tamayo, and Jennifer Schuett, their physical rescue was merely the beginning of another arduous battle. This phase exposed a deeply frustrating reality. The systemic failures, procedural negligence, and legal hurdles that force these children to endure unnecessary secondary trauma long after their initial survival. The mishandling of Katie Beers' immediate aftermath stands as an astonishing failure of protocol and basic human empathy. After being pulled from a pitch-black concrete tomb where she had been chained by the neck for 17 agonizing days, the 10-year-old was not immediately rushed to a hospital for a comprehensive medical evaluation. Unbelievably, instead of getting the severely traumatized child out of that terrifying environment, law enforcement officers decided to conduct their initial interview right then and there. They sat the young girl down in the living room to answer questions about her captivity, placing her directly next to the very man who had just subjected her to unthinkable horrors. For an hour, she was forced to recount her nightmare, while her captor sat mere feet away, staring her down. Jeanette Tamayo's battle transitioned from a locked room to a courtroom, where she had to confront a completely different kind of psychological warfare. Despite the mountain of irrefutable forensic evidence she had brilliantly secured as a 9-year-old, the defense attorney resorted to a desperate last-ditch legal strategy, often referred to as the idiot defense. The defense shamelessly attempted to minimize the perpetrator's calculated actions by arguing that he suffered from a low IQ and severe mental delays, essentially claiming he was legally unfit and incapable of distinguishing right from wrong. This legal strategy was a devastating insult to the young survivor, attempting to paint a meticulously planned crime where the attacker cut phone lines and deliberately stalked the neighborhood as the actions of an unaware individual. Fortunately, the jury saw straight through this hollow narrative and rejected it completely. But the manipulative courtroom tactics added an agonizing psychological burden to a child already paralyzed by a crippling fear of the outside world. For Jennifer Schuett, the systemic failure manifested through technological limitations and the ultimate cowardice of her attacker. Because forensic DNA profiling was in its absolute infancy in 1990, her case went ice cold, forcing her to live with a permanent, visible scar across her throat, while waiting an agonizing 18 years for science to catch up to the evidence she had so bravely provided. When her attacker was finally identified and arrested nearly 2 decades later, Jennifer spent countless sleepless nights meticulously preparing her victim impact statement, ready to finally look the monster in the eye in court. However, the system could not guarantee her that moment of confrontation. In a final pathetic act to avoid facing a judge, a jury, and the powerful woman he failed to break, the perpetrator took his own life in his jail cell before the trial could begin. This cowardly exit attempted to rob Jennifer of the courtroom closure she had relentlessly pursued for 2 decades. These systemic shortcomings highlighted a dark secondary phase of their journeys. Yet, even when the adult systems around them faltered, the titanium will of these young survivors remained completely unbroken. The ultimate measure of a human being is not found in how they endure the darkness, but in how they choose to step back into the light. For Katie Beers, Jeanette Tamayo, and Jennifer Schuett, the horrific chapters of their early childhoods did not become the concluding pages of their stories. The agonizing experiences they endured could not break them. Instead, these ordeals forged them into individuals of unparalleled strength. Their journeys of rebirth from the ashes serve as the ultimate manifestos of victory, proving that the human spirit can triumph over the most unimaginable odds. After her rescue, Katie completely severed ties with her traumatic past. She officially became a ward of the state and entered the foster care system, where for the very first time in her 10 years of existence, she discovered what a true, loving family actually looked like. Taken in by a wonderful couple named Barbara and Ted, she was provided with the unconditional love, stability, and protection she had always been denied. Shielded fiercely from the relentless media, she was finally allowed to experience a normal childhood, joining the volleyball team, acting in school plays, and making genuine friends. Decades later, she decided to fully reclaim her narrative. In 2013, she co-authored her memoir, Buried Memories, confronting her past head-on. The book became a massive New York Times bestseller, empowering her to own her story and help other survivors. Today, Katie is a highly successful accountant living a beautiful, peaceful life in Pennsylvania with a loving husband and 2 children. She completely broke the generational cycle of hardship, perfectly stating, "I try not to be sad about what happened, because ultimately it made me who I am today." Jeanette Tamayo faced a long, agonizing road to recovery, paralyzed by a crippling fear of the outside world and haunted by the nightmare she had barely survived. Yet, after 6 grueling years of intense therapy, a profound shift occurred. She absolutely refused to let a monster dictate the trajectory of her life. Channeling the exact same fierce, unimaginable courage she used to outsmart her captor, she took her power back. Jeanette went on to graduate college, dedicating herself to studying the intricacies of law enforcement, to become a fierce protector of the vulnerable. She built a highly successful career as an executive within the University of Illinois system. As a graduate of the FBI Citizens Academy and a relentless advocate for marginalized communities, she transformed her darkest hour into a lifelong empowering mission of justice and empowerment. Jennifer Schuett refused to let the cowardice of her attackers steal her closure. On August 10, 2010, the exact day her trial was supposed to begin, marking 20 years since the attack, she stood over the perpetrator's fresh grave and read her unyielding victim impact statement out loud. In a profound moment right after she finished reading, she felt a sharp pinch on her leg and realized she had been bitten by a fire ant, the exact same type of ant that had saved her life in that dark field 2 decades earlier. To Jennifer, it was the ultimate spiritual sign that the loop had finally been closed. Her victories continued to shatter expectations. Due to the horrific nature of her physical trauma, medical professionals told her it would be nearly impossible to ever conceive a child. However, after a deeply moved fertility specialist offered assistance with IVF, Jennifer defied the odds once again, giving birth to a beautiful baby girl named Jenna, and later, a son named Jonah. Today, she travels the country as a fierce vocal advocate for survivors of violent crimes. She proudly declares that she is no longer a victim, she is victorious. The profound lesson embedded within these 3 extraordinary lives is that human resilience is virtually limitless. Katie, Jeanette, and Jennifer teach us that, while we cannot always control the darkness that intercepts our paths, we hold absolute power over how we emerge from it. Their stories dismantle the misconception that severe hardship sentences a person to a lifetime of despair. Instead, they showcase that with immense grit, inner fortitude, and a refusal to be silenced, it is possible to rewrite one's destiny. They are living proof that no one can ever permanently silence your voice, unless you allow them to. If you found strength and inspiration in the incredible triumphs of Katie, Jeanette, and Jennifer, please consider subscribing to our channel. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a deep dive into stories of extraordinary human resilience, survival, and justice. Drop your thoughts in the comments below which part of their journey inspired you the most. Thank you so much for watching, and we appreciate your support.